At precisely 4:03 a.m., a screeching megaphone shattered the mountain silence. "Step away from the chickens, sir. This is an HA emergency." The voice cut through the morning fog like a rusty chainsaw. Floodlights blazed to life, illuminating my barnyard in harsh white light. 5 golf carts with flashing hazard lights roared up my gravel driveway, their electric motors whining in protest at the steep grade. Patricia Garrison, draped in a rhinestone-encrusted tracksuit that caught every beam of light, stood in the lead cart, wielding a clipboard like she was leading a charge into battle. She barked orders into a walkie-talkie with such intensity that spittle flew from her lips. My rooster Herbert was mid-crow when a taser dart hit the barn door 2 inches above his magnificent red crest. I stood there barefoot in the cold mud, holding a ceramic coffee mug that read, "Retired but dangerous," wondering if I was still dreaming. What had triggered this suburban siege at my mountain sanctuary? According to Patricia, I was guilty of harboring unauthorized livestock, maintaining unsanctioned fencing, and orchestrating what she called chicken-based terrorism against the peace-loving residents of Pine Ridge Estates. The most ridiculous part? I wasn't even in her HOA jurisdiction. My property sat a full quarter-mile outside their boundaries. My name is Daniel Morrison, and 3 years ago I bought a small mountain farm just outside Pine Ridge Estates, a neighborhood so obsessed with conformity that they published a quarterly newsletter dedicated entirely to proper mailbox height regulations. My 20-acre property was completely outside their jurisdiction, separated by county land and a very clear property line that I had surveyed twice just to be certain. But that technicality didn't stop Patricia Garrison, HOA president for 6 consecutive years and self-appointed guardian of suburban values, from taking what she called a proactive approach to external threats. She ran her HOA meetings like military briefings, complete with PowerPoint presentations about grass height violations and unauthorized garden gnome placements. Patricia called my chickens morally disruptive to the community fabric. She claimed my solar panels were suspicious and possibly being used for government surveillance. She even suggested that my peaceful morning coffee routine on the porch was a deliberate act of psychological warfare against her authority. At first, I ignored her completely, figuring she would eventually tire herself out and find a new target for her peculiar brand of neighborhood tyranny. That was my first mistake because Patricia Garrison didn't just hold grudges, she nurtured them like prize-winning orchids. The harassment started with notes, hundreds of them. Every morning, I would find them rolled up and stuffed into empty egg cartons left on my fence posts. One read, "Unregistered Agricultural Unit Number 7, also known as Herbert, violates HOA Sound Ordinance 4.3c regarding pre-dawn noise emissions." Another claimed that solar panel glare creates an undue emotional hazard for residents attempting yoga. My personal favorite accused my scarecrow of failing to comply with the community aesthetic standards for outdoor decorative figures. The notes graduated to surveillance when a drone with a Neighborhood Safety Committee decal began hovering over my compost bin every single day at noon, recording what Patricia later called evidence of biological hazard cultivation. Then came the day she cut the lock on my gate with bolt cutters and marched onto my property with a tape measure, claiming she was conducting mandatory fence height inspections for emergency fire spread regulations that she had apparently invented that very morning. When I called the sheriff's department, Deputy Collins just chuckled and said, "That woman once tried to legally annex the post office because she didn't like their flagpole height. So, good luck with that." The certified letter accusing me of harboring outlaw chickens and operating an unlicensed agricultural rebellion should have been my warning that Patricia was escalating beyond mere annoyance. The raid began at 3:58 a.m. on a foggy Saturday morning in October. Patricia had mobilized what she called Operation HOA Dawnlight, which consisted of herself and 7 volunteer enforcement officers, all retirees from Pine Ridge Estates, armed with neck pillows, pepper spray, and an astounding level of misplaced confidence. They arrived in a convoy of golf carts decorated with magnetic flashing lights purchased from an online party supply store. Patricia had somehow convinced these poor souls that they had legal authority to conduct agricultural inspections under something she called the Suburban Protection Act, which I later discovered she had completely fabricated. They trampled through my herb garden in their house slippers, zip-tied my gate open, claiming it was for safety egress purposes, and attempted to physically confiscate Herbert while citing a livestock containment order from the Pine Ridge Agricultural Subcommittee, an entity that existed only in Patricia's imagination. She waved a laminated badge she had clearly made at home, shouting about her authority as a certified poultry inspector. The chaos reached its peak when Patricia produced a bullhorn and announced she was placing my entire farm under HOA quarantine for suspected violations of national biohazard codes. Unfortunately for Patricia, one of her volunteers, a sweet elderly man named Roger, was live-streaming the entire fiasco on Facebook because his granddaughter had taught him how to use it the week before. Someone watching the stream worked for the actual United States Department of Agriculture and immediately tagged their Office of Inspector General. Within 72 hours, everything changed dramatically in Patricia's perfectly ordered world. It turns out that impersonating a federal agriculture agent, even incompetently, is a serious federal crime. Falsely citing biohazard laws while trespassing with the intent to seize livestock added several more federal violations to the growing list. 2 black SUVs from the USDA Office of Inspector General arrived at Patricia's pristine colonial home in Pine Ridge Estates on a Tuesday afternoon. The agents who stepped out weren't smiling, and they definitely weren't impressed by her homemade laminated badges or her color-coded binders full of fabricated regulations. Meanwhile, the county sheriff's department, finally taking the situation seriously, fined the Pine Ridge HOA $30,000 for illegal surveillance, criminal trespassing, and unauthorized use of emergency lights on public roads. The drone Patricia had been using was confiscated as evidence. Her famous clipboard, the one she wielded like a weapon at every HOA meeting, was photographed and entered into evidence as Exhibit A. Even her rhinestone tracksuit was documented as part of the investigation, though I'm not sure what evidentiary value that provided. Herbert, my rooster, was photographed by federal agents as the victim of attempted agricultural theft, which might be the most absurd sentence I've ever written, but was absolutely real. The federal indictment of Patricia Garrison made regional news under the headline, HOA President Faces Federal Charges in Bizarre Chicken Raid. She became the first person in Pine Ridge Estates history, possibly in all of Colorado history, to be federally indicted for what the prosecutor called poultry-related fraud and agricultural impersonation. Her mugshot, which somehow made it onto the evening news, showed her wearing a bedazzled sweatshirt that read, "Live, Laugh, Litigate," which seemed almost too perfect to be real. During her initial court appearance, Patricia attempted to argue that Herbert's crowing constituted a form of biological warfare against her community. The federal judge actually stopped proceedings to ask if she required a psychological evaluation, which Patricia declined with visible indignation. Her legal defense fund website, which she created using the HOA emergency account without authorization, raised exactly $17 before being shut down for misuse of association funds. The Pine Ridge HOA board held an emergency meeting where Patricia was unanimously removed from her position, with one board member actually applauding when the vote was finalized. Her Etsy shop, where she sold motivational signs about neighborhood pride, was shut down after investigators discovered she had been using it to sell counterfeit USDA inspector badges. The former HOA enforcement volunteers now referred to the incident as the morning we lost our minds, and Roger's Facebook live stream had garnered over 2 million views, with comments ranging from sympathy to complete disbelief. Patricia Garrison was ultimately convicted on 3 federal charges: impersonating a federal agent, conspiracy to commit agricultural theft, and interstate fraud related to her fake badge sales. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in federal prison and ordered her to pay $45,000 in restitution. When the sentence was read, Patricia's face turned the exact shade of purple as her favorite HOA violation notices, and she shouted that this was a conspiracy orchestrated by Big Chicken before her lawyer frantically hushed her.